Hi, I'm Helena. This is my kitchen. I was asked to look at and research performance art action occurring in England between 1998 and 2018, a humongously large task. I'm going to share with you a little bit from my research the title of my paper is Material Practices, Performance Art Action in England 1998 to 2018. And I kind of began by going back to thinking about 1998 and sort of picking up where Simon Herbert left off at the first art action gathering in Quebec, at which he commented in his reflective summary that along with live art being subjective, there are no guidebooks for how to do it, there are no manuals how to produce or present it, no picture books or diagrams to teach one how to sustain individual and collective activity, nor how to make space for live work. And this quote became my kind of starting point, if you like, thinking about how have things changed in 20 years. Is there a guidebook now on how to produce, how to make, and how to consider performance art action or live art? So sort of thinking about writing in 2018, kind of 20 years later, a lot's changed within England, within the landscape of performance art. Since the turn of the millennium, there's been an influx of festivals, organisations, collectives, artist projects within England supporting and shaping and developing artists and practitioners creating performance art actions. In addition, the increasing institutionalisation of live art within England's higher educational system offers courses in performance art, live art, body art and contemporary performance, providing more potential than ever for those considering a viable pathway or career within the territory. Live art as a term has essentially become the broad recognised term that references a diverse range of well-supported processes and practices of performance making. Arguably once a marginalised field, today there is a plethora of live art activity in the UK supported by a network of organisations. And that particular quote was taken from Deirdre Heddon's book Histories and Practices of Live Art, published in 2012. For example, within the UK now there are venues such as the Arnold Feeney in Bristol, Warwick Art Centre, the Institute of Contemporary Arts in London, Camden's People Theatre, Battersea Arts Centre, Chelsea Theatre, again all in London, who regularly programme live art works and performance art actions, including works of body art, noise art, performance art and art action. In addition, organisations such as Arts Admin, Unlimited, Shape Arcs and of course the Live Art Development Agency offer support for artists at all stages of their careers and for those encountering barriers to access. Such a wealth of opportunity, although advantageous to the emergent artist, does also raise questions as to the placement and expectation of performance art action today, especially in light of the surge of infrastructures and institutional support offering guidance on how to become a live artist. I think essentially I was interested in considering, yes, there is more support available in 2018. There are courses, there are institutions that are able to kind of provide a platform for those artists, but does that institutional support throw up any, other connotations or other issues? There are of course limitations within this investigation. I've been able to offer a truly exhaustive account of all the art action in England over 20 years, as it would be virtually impossible within such parameters to cover the extensive arts activities and international influences that have shaped the landscape. However, this brief survey of art action in England between 1998 and 2018 seeks to highlight some of the key contemporary performance artists, events, festivals, organisations and collectives that have sustained and continue to sustain recognisable practice and have contributed to the performance art scene. I began thinking about my own contextual basis, coming kind of from a landscape between practices of performance and fine art. And I guess the contextual basis for my practice stems from institutional teaching influences grounded within a cultural shift that can be identified in that space between performance and fine art. So I was interested in how art action begins to navigate those kind of landscapes and areas. And in the wake of the Sensations exhibition and the extensive media interest that surrounded the young British artists during the late 1990s, sort of 1999, there was a shift that developed towards live performance, especially that which heralded the body as site and material, emphasising the fluidity of exchange between object and observer. Adrian Heathfield noted the malleability and visceral tension between fine art and performance that highlighted some fundamental concerns and influences within the context of performance art at the turn of the millennium. For example, he commented on Damien Hirst's piece, The Pursuit of Oblivion, in which he perceived that the liveness and interconnected awareness of presentness that the work evokes, quote, in this regard, oblivion is symptomatic of a profound impetus in contemporary art and culture towards the immediate, the immersive, and the interactive, a shift to the live. So there became a drive toward immediacy and interaction, and this resurgent and investment into artists embracing concepts of time, presence, and durational limits, and the boundaries of their and our bodies, this kind of emergence between witness and performer, arguably became to wider public and media attention through the Live Culture event, which was a collaboration between the Live Art Development Agency and Tate Modern in 2003. The Live Art Development Agency was founded in 1999 by the current director Lois Keedon and continues to be a centre for live art, supporting, producing and providing opportunities and resources for those who wish to make, watch, research, study, teach, present or write about live art. That was taken from their website. The Live Culture event, in collaboration with LADAs, saw a renewed publicly funded art gallery initiating a dialogue with contemporary performance from both national and international artists within the context of the gallery's collective display, which at the time was quite groundbreaking, having that kind of body-based visceral work on public display. The Live Culture event provided an opportunity to engage with the shifting nature of live art practice in relation to the visual arts. It brought together distinguished artists, theorists and curators to examine the expansion of performance art across broader artistic and social arenas, together with its role in relation to cultural change. The 2003 Live Culture event consolidated and critically responded to the resurgence in cultural interests in experimental performative practice within the context of the visual art scene, with liveness being the central focus. The event offered a framework to consider key shifts in performance art, for example, exploring risk and extremity, publicly confronting the art and politics of the body, for example, Franco B's notorious performance, I Miss You, which was presented in the vast space of the Turbine Hall. The Franco B's piece, I Miss You, created a kind of like white catwalk down the expansive area of the Turbine Hall, at which point he bled along a kind of runway-esque canvas. The mythology of this work has become part of the historical fabric of performance art. However, there are other events that were occurring within England at the same time. For example, Span 2, International Performance Art Festival in 2001, and the Bedford Project in 2003. Span 2, again, was an international performance art festival supported by the Arts Council and curated by Andre Stitt and Roddy Hunter, taking place over 27 days at Dilston Grove in London. It allowed 21 established and emerging artists, including now well-known names such as Kira O'Reilly, Lone Twin, Stuart Brisley and Julie Bacon, to name a few, and they were commissioned to make new site-related works over a sustained period of 4 weeks, which is a long time. It's quite rare to see that kind of sustained practice. Of particular value and interest is the emphasis on giving the artist space and creative freedom to both develop new work and new working methods. For example, Kira O'Reilly's consideration of the surface of the body to be a porous material that recalls a similar porosity existing inside, outside and public-private, encouraging collective thoughts on the limitations and capacities of membrane. In the context of Span 2 and the site and the space, this became a working process through the investigation of concrete surfaces of Dilston Grove. The way in which the kind of residency was the consideration of performance art within a broader community was key to the ethos of Span 2. Asking questions such as, what can the public experience of the performance artist process, and what happens when artists work in a community rather than isolation. So it tried to dispel any kind of myths of, this is the performance, this is what you will see. It opened up the entire process of making work. The latter two provocations here frame the primary concerns of the festival, as it attempted to show both the performance and the creative process. This expansive festival offered a rare opportunity in the public space to see a broad range of new live performance work, while simultaneously being able to engage in the live creative process. The infiltration of artistic space, sustained interdisciplinary practice and community engagement were key when considering the Bedford project. Occurring at the same time as live culture, it exemplified sustained regional activity in the form of a year-long live art engagement, culminating in 9 performances, a split-site exhibition at the Bedford BCA Gallery and the Cecil Higgins Art Gallery, a suite of large-format digital prints and a documentary short film. While emphasising the importance of non-London-centric activities, this expansive collaboration between André Stitt and the BCA Gallery offered both parties a chance to present complex work that doesn't conform to preconceived notions of visual art in terms of subject matter, medium, and delivery. The Bedford project offered the local community exposure and interaction with work only rarely seen outside of metropolitan centres. Part of the performance comprised 9 performance art actions being Stitt's term, that were a reflection of the extensive time and processes spent with local communities. Quote taken from Stitt: "Out of the context of memory, site and place, local culture becomes fertile ground for a suite of contemporary mythologies based on hearsay stories and manufactured truths." When I chatted with André Stitt in an interview, he recalled how certain performances from the series would still continue to resonate. For example, The Italian Job, in which he wore an Italian football shirt along with a party of Bedford's first and second generation Italian community, carried a hod of pre-fired bricks on a pilgrimage from the Stuartby brickworks to the Italian vice consulate. Although a seemingly simple and evasive action, the memory of the humility and hospitality of the retired immigrant Italian brickworkers lingered. It became an important part of the performance. And it was through Stitt's recollections that it reminded me of performance art's ability to create disabling encounters through work which may be joyous and celebratory as well as discomforting and painful. An optimism of community collaboration prompted by a celebrated fusion of culture, spaces, faces, music, ages and lives, of being together in our performance together without the separation of infrastructure or walls. The Italian Job offered an example that celebrated and explored cultural and physical migration, memory and the contribution made by Bedford's Italian community, but it also did more than that. It opened conversations and exploded preconceptions of what performance art was to a community that had not previously had any exposure to that kind of work or processes. It suggested that performance art could be a process of sharing stories, of then understanding and processing the responsibility of those stories and lives, carrying them back through into a performance that ethically held the participants, giving them back their stories through a new experience. It broke boundaries of what constituted the public and the private. It was intimate in a collective sense, reminding us that the world begins behind your neighbour's wall. I love that quote from Stitt. Similarly, this idea of performance art occurring within a community and how you hold that community and create work but share work also came through a thread in an interview that I undertook with Ernst Fischer and Helen Spackman. Which prompted consideration of another example of a sustained performance art action project that both invited and probed at the interrelation between artists and participants, while also encouraging a multiplicity of performance and social relations. The conversation with both Ernst Fischer and Helen Spackman was less of an interview and more of a kind of flow of anecdotes, descriptions and ideas, recalling works and artists from both now and then. before I even got around to asking a question of what work kind of resonates with you throughout your experiences, Ernst and Helen independently began to talk about a seminal piece for them, which was the Book of Blood, Human Rights, rights spelt with a W in hyphens. A consciously political piece that, by Fisher's own admission, has yet to reach its full potential and probably never will. The Book of Blood, Human Rights engages human rights asking a fundamental question: what can human rights do for performance, and what can performance do for human rights? Beginning in 2006, the collaborative action-based project still continues today, with its latest incarnation performed as part of Wake Festival in Folkestone 2017, which was commissioned by Performance Space. While the structure and content of each Book of Blood event is determined in response to its site specificity and the concerns of the local participants, its central performance remains constant. This consists of spectators voluntarily donating a pinprick of blood extracted by a qualified nurse under sterile conditions. Each drop of blood is mixed with an anticoagulant and red ink and used, 1 drop per letter, to transcribe the Universal Declaration of Human Rights in a purpose-made book, handmade by Fisher, the contents of which grow and the language of which changes as the project travels from venue to venue. The work has travelled internationally over decades and has been presented within multiple festivals within England, including PSI 12, Performing Rights at the Chapel, Queen Mary's, University of London, 2006, Sensitive Skin Festival, Nottingham, and Sacred, 2008, commissioned by Chelsea Theatre. However, the agitation and political agency within the project's potential for performance engagement occurs beyond the spaces and places of festivals. As noted by Fisher, the process shifted and became much more nomadic and aligned with place and communities, especially engaging with refugees. Thus, arts festivals became a vehicle through which to access different places and spaces. We would travel and make intense contact for a week or more, initiating workshops and developing other actions to occur alongside Book of Blood, which would in turn become the additional performances. And for those days, the spotlight was on those engaged, communicating and making work. However, this in itself reveals complexities of working in such ways with communities, as there will come a point where the project ends and the artists leave. How can such ideas and connections be sustained and followed up? And it was here that I felt Fisher raised a really interesting and complex question relating to the ethics of artistic responsibility and the ways in which performance art action is able to integrate and engage with communities. This is a very open-ended question here. There's not space to kind of try and answer this, but is it enough for artists to briefly engage with communities, to open avenues of opportunity and insight, only then to inevitably leave? Can such moments of interaction and engagement be sustained and followed up through subsequent contact and communication? I guess key in terms of what's occurred in England over the last few years is the emergence and development of performance art festivals in England, and they still continue to be a major platform and point of exposure for both established and emerging artists. From the late 1990s, major cities across England saw the emergence of festivals dedicated to the promotion and nurturing of performance art action for artists at all stages of their careers. For example, Fierce Festival, founded by Mark Ball in 1998, located in the West Midlands. Still thriving now and led by artistic director Aaron Wright, Fierce is a member of Live Art UK, which is a national portfolio organisation receiving sustained funding. Similarly, activity also grew in Bristol with the development of In Between Time Festival, emerging as part of the live programme at the theatre and art gallery venue The Arnold Feeney and produced by Helen Cole, again also receiving national portfolio status and sustained funding. During 2 decades, Fierce and In Between Time have supported and showcased hundreds of national and international artists, both as commissioned works and selected artists, including Ron Athey, Dominic Johnson, Kira O'Reilly, London Seatal, Marcus Cry, Lauren Barry Holstein, Selena Thompson, Lone Twin, French and Motorhead, Martin O'Brien, Manuel Vasson, F.K. Alexander, Joe Bannon, Kim Noble and Brian LaBelle, and hundreds more. There's not scope within this brief survey to elaborate on many of the artists who have contributed to the vibrant festival scheme within England. However, I will pause briefly to mention the work of Hancock and Kelly, whose sustained practice, innovative approaches to collaboration, cross-pollination between disciplines, investment in materials, and presence across multiple platforms, collectives, and festivals within England is worthy of note. Since 2001, Hancock and Kelly have collaborated on a series of works provoking the gaps between subjects and testing what collaboration can be. Richard Hancock is one part of the collaboration and Tracy Kelly is the other. Navigating the line between performance and fine art, Kelly attributes her formative exposure to performance occurring while a student in Nottingham and witnessing works by artists such as Frank O'Bee and Kira O'Reilly at the Sensitive Skin Performance Festival. Issues of materiality, value and embodied knowledge have been pivotal to the complex critical and aesthetic dialogues that they undertake. As a collaborative, Hancock and Kelly's practice has a fluidity that shifts between live performance action and an investment with key reoccurring materials such as gold leaf, ink and charcoal, with the resulting pieces being a series of visceral and queer encounters, both moving and spectacular. For example, Iconographia, a 3 to 4 hour durational performance with a pig carcass and gold leaf, performed multiple times, including in between time at the Arnold Feeney in 2010. Delicate action sees Kelly sealing and entwining together the bodies of Hancock and a dead pig with sheets of gold leaf, and this is her quote, "In the fold between flesh, between hearts and between breaths, two bodies are wrapped in a second skin, a skin that will change their economy and shed their dreams. Iconographia is a text that flows and ebbs, that begs and borrows and steals, and ultimately exchanges power for dust." There are more examples in the main text, but I think particularly with Hancock and Kelly, it's this idea of the awareness and value of creative space, time and processes for artists to develop and discover work has become part of the fabric of performance art action within England. I think there's a lot more awareness of the importance of that, and I think today there are multiple initiatives and projects, albeit a lot of which remain unpaid or severely underfunded, within festivals and via organisational support that offer artists opportunities to explore and evaluate their practice without necessarily finding the pressure of an end product or performance. For example, the London-based Performance Space, launched in 2011 by creative partners Bean and Benjamin. At the time of its emergence, Performance Space offered one of the first focused studio and exhibition spaces for performance artists to interrogate, develop and present working processes. They are committed to provide and fundamentally support challenging and difficult work that embraces performance art as an ever-evolving medium. Now based in Folkestone, Performance Space's holistic and diverse approach continues to offer artists space and time to explore their practice through sustained residencies, festivals such as Wake in 2017, panel talks, conversations and open platforms. Similarly, as a cornerstone organisation for performance and live art practices and art action, LADA, the Live Art Development Agency, continues to offer sustained support programmes for artists to develop actions and dialogues. For example, DIY, initiated back in 2002, has provided an opportunity for artists working within the field of live art to conceive and run professional development workshops for other artists. Still running today, the eclectic, diverse workshops led by artists such as Zealand Carter, Leslie Hill and Helen Paris, Catherine Arianello and Stacey Makishi are geared towards the often unusual needs of artists whose practice are grounded in challenging and unconventional approaches, forms and concepts. Another festival which continues to support and engage a huge amount of art action is Spill Festival, created in 2007 by Robert Passetti and produced by the Passetti Company, which not only has an impressive legacy featuring performance artists, sound, music and film, but also think tanks, mentoring and commissions. They featured major international artists such as Karen Finlay and Heather Casillas, alongside emergent UK Bay artists such as Poppy Jackson, Rhiannon Armstrong, Robert Hardacre, Robert Hesp and Liz Atkin, to name a few of the hundreds programmed. The diverse programme and open call to artists has been foundational in promoting and establishing careers. For example, Poppy Jackson's Performance Action Site, which was performed at Spill Festival at Tomby Studios in 2015, which involved her durational action, involved her sitting naked, straddling the gable apex of the roof of the Tomby Studios in East London for an 8-hour duration over 2 consecutive days. This was picked up by The Guardian, and theatre and performance critic Lynn Gardner commented on the way in which the action straddles the personal and the political, unassumingly beautiful and quietly moving to behold. Jackson seems to become as at one with the building, part of its very architecture, as if her body is an extension of the brickwork. I think by 2011, the cultural landscape of performance art action in England is recognisably rich with diversity, supportive infrastructures and practices, as seen through the sustained nationally funded annual biannual festivals such as Fierce in Birmingham, IBT in Bristol, Spill, split site between London and Ipswich, Compass Festival in Leeds, Sick Festival in Manchester, regular performance art live art platforms such as Steakhouse Live in London, Live Art Bistro in Leeds, and the continued support of key organisations such as LADA, Unlimited, Shape Arts and Arts Admin. Support of organisations such as LADA, Unlimited, Shape Arts and Arts Admin offer security through sustained funding to support such initiatives, and basically give artists the potential to show work and receive support to potentially a greater extent than ever before. However, within this, the complexities of sustained funding, although offering a security, may also offer a flip side. Although sustained funding offers security and stability, ensuring a regular and paid presence for both artists and organisers, along with that comes the complex weight of adhering to protocols, funding agendas, risk assessments, venue criteria, etc. Asking questions such as, does the need to self-sustain as a performance artist obtain funding to live, tour, to gain a reputation, or repeatedly showcase at regular festivals? Does this process run the risk of diluting a practice, which by its very nature has historically and vehemently rejected such avenues of commercialisation? Are venues still able to showcase risky work, or does the ever-increasing pressure of rent costs, insurance and liability stifle their ability to accept moments of mess, shock and unpredictability? Is it still even possible for performance art action to exist as a communal event, subverting the activities of the everyday and sidestep the ever-increasing trend of music videos and celebrity artists presenting performance art preconceived as entertainment? A couple of those comments were taken from a recent article in freeze.com titled "Has Performance Art Lost Its Teeth to Offend?", which can be seen as part of the references. As personally speaking, as a co-director of Tempting Failure CIC, which stands for a Community Interest Company, we are a biannual festival of performance and noise art currently located in Croydon, South London, which is where the artistic director Thomas Bacon is based. Applying for financial support. Currently we're not an NPO and we do not receive any stable annual funding. Securing selected artists, locating supportive venues and meeting funding expectations while adhering to our ethos to always aim to showcase underrepresented artwork that may interrogate, risk and challenge preconceptions is a constant tension. Bit of background. Conceived in 2011, Tempting Failure was founded by Thomas John Bacon and sought to showcase and programme artwork that is usually sidelined by producers and arts venues for being logistically too difficult, unexpected, prone to censorship, or perhaps deemed too extreme. And that still continues to be our major drive for the festival, to prioritise work which seeks to do that, or art action which seeks to do that. Prior to becoming a producer and later director, my contact with the festival began at the first event in 2012 in London as a performing artist, then again in 2003 in Bristol, and in 2015. My route in was somewhat unconventional. I remember receiving a provocative email through a networking email site asking whether anyone had recently been rejected from a major performance art festival call-out, which I had, haven't we all? Consequently, I applied and was successful to perform within Tempting Failure, and immediately became invested in the energy, approach and ethos of the team led by Bacon. I was inspired by the work that was programmed. It was alive, risky, full of energy, with artists being given the space to explore and challenge themselves, their audiences and their practices. I was also inspired by the support and community-based approach towards making the festival happen, not just by those directly involved in TF, but by the surrounding artistic communities. As mentioned at the start of this writing, it's been virtually impossible to offer a truly exhaustive and fully formed study of all the performance art action that has occurred in the last 20 years. However, I hope reading the full review and survey may shed some light on the extensive and inspiring performance art actions that have occurred and continue to grow within England, whilst also trying to raise questions as to the state of performance art today and tomorrow. It is a field that I care passionately about, and despite my own limitations and responsibilities, wish to remain a contributor to. Performance art should never remain static or stable within a comfort zone. It should agitate, provoke and probe, fusing disciplines and boundaries, creating scenes and spaces of joy, discomfort and risk, forever asking the question, what's next? At the time of writing this, which was a few months ago, tickets for this year's Tempting Failure have just gone live. TF18's biannual celebration of performance and noise art action will bring 70 artists to various venues in Croydon, South London, over a 2-week period in July 2018. Arguably our most ambitious contribution to the performance art scene in England to date. The programme, curated on the theme of fractured bodies, is exciting, challenging and immense, featuring artists selected from an open call and commissioned artists from all over the world, including Selena Bonelli, Natalie Ramos, Gillian Jane Lees and Adam York Gregory, Weeks and Whitford, Kieran Wakeman, Yoga in Black, Clive Henry and Yoel, Sarah Glass, River Lynn, Sarah Davis, Jeffrey Bird, Rocio Bolivia, with Dave Phillips, and a collaborative workshop-inspired performance with Mehmet Sander and participating NHS staff, plus a video screening and retrospective of Herman Niche. Is it enough? Have we done enough? Will it evoke, inspire, challenge and change, dispel preconceptions and bring new audiences to performance art action? Will it genuinely, and not just for the purposes of a funding remit, cross and link generations, communities and disciplines whilst infiltrating bodies, blood, flesh, fluids, fine art and noise art practice? And if it does, how can we ever really truly know the effective impact? What and where is the evidence gathered through our evaluations, collective memories and documents? Perhaps through the slow trickle of influence and small endeavours seen in the emergence of new future artistic collectives, festivals and platforms, those who begin with nothing more than passion and idea and the will to make something happen. I don't know what the impact of this year's festival will be. I hope it will be great. I only know that for sure that the reasons why a small, overworked and underpaid dedicated team of artists, academics, students and parents strive to make festivals and events such as TF happen is the hope and belief that performance art matters, not just to the artists who make and present the work and to those who witness it, but its potential to impact upon the daily lives of everyone, to ignite something, love or loathing, questions, reflections, outrage or passion, inspiring the freedom to think, interact, but ultimately the power to be able to respond. Apologies. This was my interruption. Say bye, Neil. Say bye, Neil. Thank you.